everybody, the next plane off the pile is the Stanley number 20 circular plane. Let's take a look at it. This old plane belongs to a subscriber named Brad, and it is definitely ready to be restored. The book value of a Stanley number 20 is $90 to $240. A Type 1 can be worth as much as $360. The number 20 was nickel plated up until 1919, and from 1919 on they were Japan. This one is Japan. It has a flexible steel sole that allows it to plane convex and concave surfaces. Stanley acquired this design when they bought Leonard Bailey's Victor patents in 1884. And the Victor number 20 name remained on the planes until Stanley stopped making them. Stanley made several circular planes, the 13, the 20, the 20 and a half, and the 113. The number 20 and the 20 and a half were by far the best of the bunch. This old girl is in need of some serious cleanup. And it's time to break her down. And here's a look at the parts all broken down. The only thing that's a little bit tricky about getting this thing apart is getting the sole off. I removed the pins that hold the sole on, and that's the tricky part, because when Stanley puts that thing together, they're peened over on both ends. So what you have to do is put a little bit of lubricant on them, and when that's done you can tap them in. They'll go in halfway until they hit that part right there. Once they hit this hole, they won't go through any further because where they're peened over. It's a good fit on the pin here. These openings right here are wider than what this piece here is. So you tap them in part way so you got one end of the pin sticking out. Then what I do is I take a Dremel grinder and I grind right on the end that sticks out right around there, just like what I'm showing you. Grind off that peened over edge until it taps out. When they go back together, I'm going to have to flare the end out again so it doesn't slip through. Now I'm going to take the frog and the body into my deep sink with some hot water and Simple Green and scrub them down. The scrubbing is done, and I would estimate that the Japanning is at least 90%, probably more, and it doesn't look too bad, so I think this is going to be a touch-up. The next thing I want to do is take the bend out of that iron. You can see from the side, right where it was at the back of the frog, it must have been dropped at some point and the iron is bent. Sometimes all it takes to get the bend out is a good squeeze in the vise. One side, flip it over, and give the other side a good squeeze. And then we'll take a look at it and see how she turned out. I don't know if you can see it, but as you eyeball down the side of that iron, there's still one little bit slight bend in it on one side. I'm going to position the edge of this piece of oak right on the edge where the bend is. Give it a couple good whacks. Now when I eyeball down over it, I don't see any bend at all, so it's pretty good. I did a video a while back that showed you how to make these scrapers. Really easy to do. I just put a fresh burr on it, and now I'm going to take all these flat metal pieces that you see right here, and I'm going to scrape them with my scraper. I love these scrapers. Every once in a while you got to stop and touch up your burr, and then it'll perform spectacular again. Even the lateral adjustment lever gets scraped. And a little bit of scraping made a big difference, and look at the pile of rust that came off of those parts. Next I'm going to do the machine surfaces on the frog and the body. To do that I'm going to use these tools right here. Some steel wool, sanding block, 150 grit paper, a wire brush, sanding sticks that I showed you how to make, and I'll be using the 150 grit sandpaper on my lapping station. Wherever it's practical I use the lapping station, and the places where it's not, my sanding stick can usually get into it. If not that, you've got the wire brush and steel wool, which I go over everything with the wire brush and steel wool anyhow. I'm using 150 grit paper on both sides of the sole. And the last of the flat surfaces is the lever cap. The underside, I did it on my wire wheel, and this was looking pretty good, so I'm going to use the worn out sanding sponge to clean off the rust. And I'm going to follow that up with probably some 1000 grit paper, see how it looks. And this is the 1000 grit. All of the machine and the flat surface is cleaned up nicely. Let's take a closer look at them. The next thing I'm going to do is use some steel wool on the Japan parts, maybe a little bit of the worn sanding sponge. But overall, this is coming out a lot better than what I thought it would based on all the rust that it originally had. The iron was really bad, and it turns out that it is a sweetheart iron. And I've got the leading edge, the backside flattened with a 150 grit, ready to take it down with 1000, 3, 5, and 7000 grit paper and put an edge on this thing. So I've steel wooled all the Japan parts, and now it's time to use my little marker pens to do a touch up to the Japanning. Everywhere where you see silver shining through, I'm going to put multiple coats over it, and we're going to see how it looks. This is tedious work, but it's well worth the finished product. Multiple coats. Try not to overlap the black any more than you possibly have to. Take your time and get her done. And here's how the parts look with one coat of the oil paint applied. You can definitely see where I did it, but when it's done it's going to blend in and it won't be hardly noticeable at all. I like doing this, some people might not. I think it's going to prolong the life of the original Japanning by sealing the edges where it was peeling off. I'm going to continue to apply multiple coats, probably 4 or 5, and then I'm going to lightly steel wool it and it'll be ready for the dirty oil. I'm using my General number 810 chisel and plane iron sharpener to get the 25-degree bevel on this iron. I recommend you watch my video on foolproof plane iron sharpening to get all the details on how to sharpen an iron to be razor sharp. First thing I do is the screw slots. I clean them with a dental pick, and I fold sandpaper to fit tight in the slots to finish it up. And the inside of the brass adjustment knob gets done with a piece of cut down sanding sponge. Just stick it inside there and start turning it, and it'll clean up really nice. I'm going to stop right here with this one because I don't always like to over polish them. I'll finish the small parts on my wire wheel. And the small parts cleaned up great, and it's time to give them a coat of rim oil. I like to use this oil because it darkens them and gives them a kind of a patina aged look. And next it's time to break out the dirty oil rag. My dirty oil rag is saturated with oil and dirt from years of use. The oil is the Howard Feed and Wax. Everything gets coated with dirty oil. And it's time to take a look at all the pieces because the dirty oil went on, the dirty oil got wiped off, and I gave everything a coat of wax, and it's looking pretty good. You can see the body with the touch up to the Japanning, the flexible soles looking really good, all the small parts. Looking across from left to right, the frog looks good. It's time to put this old plane back together. And ain't she a fine looking plane? Look at that old number 20. Who'd ever thought she'd come back to look this good? She started out with about 90% of the Japanning remaining. I was able to save the old Japanning by doing some touch-up paint. The iron cleaned up better than I thought it would. It's got some patina where the old pitting was, but overall it turned out very good. The flexible steel sole looks better than what a lot of them do. They tend to rust and get pitted. This one's nice and smooth and shows some patina. If this old girl works half as good as what she looks, it's going to be one fine plane. All I can say is I hope that Brad is as happy with this plane as what I am when he gets it in his hands. It's time to take her for a test drive. For this test drive, I'm going to be doing the concave planing first on a 3/4 inch piece of poplar. Because of the way the grain runs, I'm going to work down one side first, going past the halfway point, and they're going to turn it around and do the other side. It looks like the little plane is doing a fine job. It's time to turn it around. Coming in from the opposite direction. Oh yeah, smooth as glass. Doing a great job. This is one of the best circular planes probably ever made. Time to turn this board over and do some concave planing. So for the convex, I'm going to use the same technique, working 1/2 at a time. I did not change the depth setting on the plane. All I did was adjust the sole so it fits the shape of the curve. And on this side, it's also doing a great job. It's amazing what you can do with a good plane and a razor sharp iron. Time to switch this piece around and do the other side. I flipped it end for end. We're going to see how it'll finish up. Smooth as butter. I'd say this plane definitely passes the test. It always feels great when you can take an old tool like this from a rusted mess and return it to its former glory. Hopefully this one will last for decades to come, be handed down from generation to generation, and who knows what wonderful kind of projects it might make. And that's it for today's video. I'll be packing this beautiful number 20 up and sending it back to Brad. For those of you that follow me, you might have noticed I'm sporting my newest of the wood wigs, and there's a contest. So if you haven't seen the video, I've got a video posted on the wood wig contest. You can win a free Winchester number 3 plane, so check out that video and figure out how you can win. That's it for today. Next off the pile is going to be a surprise. Don't know what it is, but right now it's time for supper. Bye.